Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Greidick. I'm Dr. Martha Greidick. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. Whether we're talking about work-life balance, burnout, or work-related stress, disconnecting from our jobs on a daily basis is critical for our health and well-being. Technology has made it very convenient for us to connect with our work virtually from anywhere where we have an internet connection. However, there are two sides to these technological advances. As convenient as technology has made it for us, it has also created something that we might refer to as an electronic leash. Being connected to our jobs, or being able to connect to our jobs on a 24/7 basis, is both a blessing and a curse. And it's absolutely up to us to figure out how we're going to treat technology so that we can dictate in how it affects us. There are multiple things to consider when we think about the idea of disconnecting from our work and how effectively each one of us does it. There is the employer expectations that we should consider. And it's important not to make any assumptions. Does your employer actually expect that you be on call practically 24/7 after hours, during weekends, during holidays? Now, this is different from when you're actually on call. Of course, some professions have that component added to them where a person is on call. But for the vast majority of us, when our working hours, the official working hours as set in our schedule, are over, then we should disconnect from our work. But does the employer expect that you remain connected? That's one consideration. The other consideration is whether you, as the employee, are making an assumption that the employer expects you to be available on a nearly 24-hour basis. That may not be true at all. That may simply be your assumption. So it's very important that we take the time to understand what the reality is. Is it the case that the employer actually expects you to be connected to your job on a 24-hour basis, virtually without being compensated for it? Or is it simply an assumption of yours? Once that's cleared up, and the only way we're going to clear it up is to actually have a conversation between the employer and the employee. Once that's cleared up, that's one hurdle out of the way when we consider the importance of disconnecting from our jobs on a regular basis. It's important that I mention here how critical it is for us to set boundaries. Each individual employee needs to be able to set boundaries. If we are considering work-life balance or something like stress, work-related stress, or burnout, it's up to us. It is our responsibility to set boundaries between our work life and our home life. Not only do we need to set the boundaries, and that calls for defining them and setting them, but it also requires that we communicate them. If your employer doesn't know what your boundaries are, he or she may cross them inadvertently. So it's very important to, one, define and set those boundaries, but also to communicate them with the employer. The same could be said for employers. Employers have the responsibility of setting work-life balance boundaries for their employees as well. A concerned employer will take the time to establish what is acceptable and what is not in terms of their employees working beyond their regularly scheduled hours and not signing off after hours during weekends or holidays. If the idea of disconnecting from your job sounds pretty foreign to you, you may not know where to begin in terms of disconnecting from your job on a regular basis. Really, it should be on a daily basis. The key is to get started, and it may be something as simple as disconnecting for one day. When you are done with your work, when your work day is officially over, you may want to turn off your work cell phone if you have one and not check any work-related messages, any work emails, any social media that may be related to work. When you disconnect, you disconnect. Try that for a day. It's somewhere to start. Something else to consider is the importance of being proactive while you are purposely disconnecting from your job. So let's say you're home, it's after work, you turned off your work cell phone. Now what? Well, you may be tempted to reconnect with work. So in order to help you with that temptation, it's important to utilize this newfound freedom in a proactive and productive way. Connect with your family and friends. Connect with yourself. Tackle some of your to-do things on your personal list or your home list. Do something fun. Do something productive that is not work-related. In other words, occupy yourself so that you're not sitting there not knowing what to do with this newfound freedom and being tempted to reconnect to your job. Notice what effect being disconnected from work has on you and those around you. How do you feel? How are you taking advantage of this newly found freedom? And are those around you supportive of you? And are they enjoying your presence within the family or within your circle of friends? So it's important to pay attention of what's happening as you begin this new experience. It may feel strange or odd at first, but I bet if you give it some time, it'll feel pretty good and you will actually enjoy it. And once again, the key is to utilize this newfound freedom in a productive way so that you're not sitting there twiddling your thumbs thinking about work. Once you tried it the first time, now it's your opportunity to practice this being disconnected from work on a more frequent basis. The goal is to be disconnected from work every day and every weekend, every holiday, every vacation time, so that ideally you should work when you're at work or during your regularly scheduled working hours, and for the most part, if not 100% of the time, be disconnected from work during all the other times. As with anything else new, practice makes better. So once you try it the one time, make sure you're continuing in your efforts to be disconnected more and more frequently until you find yourself automatically disconnecting from your job on a regular basis every day. As this episode comes to an end, let's review what was discussed. When we're discussing work-life balance, work-related stress, or burnout, the idea of disconnecting from work on a regular basis, ideally on a daily basis, is key. It's important that we don't allow assumptions to rule what we do. Is it the case that the employer expects you to be connected via the available technology on a 24/7 basis, or is it simply your assumption? Have you set proper boundaries between your work life and your personal life, and have you communicated those boundaries to your employer? Try disconnecting for just one day. See how it feels. Make sure you're using this newly found freedom proactively so that you are not only being productive in your personal life, but you're also occupying your mind so you're not sitting around thinking about work. Once you try it one time, make sure you keep practicing so that you get to a point where you are disconnecting from work on a regular basis. As the week unfolds, I invite you to examine how well you do when it comes to disconnecting from work on a regular basis. Is today's technology a great benefit to you, or has it turned into an electronic leash? Take what you've learned from today's episode and apply it in your own experience. After all, your health and well-being is goal number one, so it's important that you practice proper work-life balance, and that includes disconnecting from your work on a regular basis, ideally every single day. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I hope that you will join me again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well-being.